Namaste, guys. Christian Arlong, life enhancement consultant, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Sunday morning, or depending upon when and where you're watching this, but right now it's 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time here in Denver, Colorado. And if you guys have been logging into the live streams, we've been doing this every Sunday. I don't know, it's been a while. It's been a couple years that we've been doing the live streams every Sunday, trying to add value to you guys. And the three main topics that we talk about are energy healing, meditation, and practical spirituality. Joe, Atma Namaste, how are you? And the teachings that I'm sharing with you are from my teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui, who you see on the wall. He is the modern founder of Pranic Healing and Arhatic Yoga, as well as some of my life experiences, my experiences working with clients. Okay, Atma Namaste. Ellie, Atma Namaste. You still don't have a picture showing that beautiful face of yours, but I'm sure you have your reasons being on the DL lately. Leanne, Atma Namaste. How are you? How are you? Today's topic, there's a lot that I want to cover with today's topic, and hopefully it'll inspire you guys to activate your thinking as opposed to reacting emotionally. But when I'm not on these live streams sharing value that I have with you guys, or hopefully value that I have for you guys, I'm either reading books, I'm on YouTube studying different issues around spirituality, meditation, yoga, social dynamics between men and women, relationships. It's 3 a.m. in Australia. You should be asleep, but apparently you want your fix for the day. Start off your Monday morning just right. But you're a nurse. You kind of got weird, wacky schedule all the time. Every nurse I've ever met, every day is like a different schedule for them. So welcome. Always good to have you on. I'm drinking some coffee in your honor. So I was at a bookstore yesterday. Emily, Atma Namaste. Long time. Good to have you on. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're making buku bucks in real estate. And so I was at Barnes & Noble's yesterday with a friend, and I was going through the books, Chris, Atma Namaste, and I saw a book that I hadn't seen consciously for probably about 20 years, right? Hadn't seen this book for about 20 years. And I remember the people who recommended it to me said, this is a great, great book. And I've seen it recommended on other reading lists and book lists from other people that I follow, blogs, YouTube channels, what have you. And I thought to myself, well, let's see. Let me tap into this book again. So I was flipping through it. Sharon, Atma Namaste. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get this book. I'll add it to my book list because I'm already reading 2 books right now. But I'll add it to my book list. So I got home. I started reading it. And then, as you guys know, because we're in the interconnected world of the internet, you read a passage in a book or a quote in a book, and then that leads you to some website, and then that website leads you to some blog, and that blog leads you to some YouTube video, and then that leads you to connect to somebody on Facebook, right? So it's this like interconnectedness. Mittal, Atma Namaste. So you kind of go down that rabbit hole. And the book was written in the early 1900s, and a lot of success books were based on this book. Carlton, Atma Namaste. I'll go back to sleep and listen to the replay. Have a Merry Christmas. Hugs and kisses. Stay handsome. Oh, you're so sweet. Sleep well. Get a few more hours of sleep in, Leanne. I'll talk to you later. So, this book, you might want to write it down and add it to your reading list. It's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And this guy basically started off as an administrative clerical person in London, working for a company. And then one day he just got the inspiration to start writing books. And he ended up writing 19 books within a very short period of time. And I believe he left his body in his early 40s, right? So his purpose was to be an author, an inspirational author, to guide people to a better way of living. And the title of the book is coming from a passage from the Bible, which is interesting because at this time in history, from where he was growing up, is very strong Christian influence. He was brought up as a Christian. It doesn't say what kind of Christian he was, what kind of practicing Christian he was, but he also studied and was influenced by Eastern religions and metaphysical teachings, which I thought was very, very interesting. It seems a lot of metaphysical teachings came about 100 years ago, especially from the Theosophical Society, which was started in England. So he's getting the title of the book, As a Man Thinketh, from the Bible. As a man thinketh in his heart, so be he. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't have the passage right in front of me. And then you have one of the most successful books, personal development books of all time, that is also called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So you have this book that predates it about 30 years, As a Man Thinketh, and then you have Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There's an adapted as a... So actually Emily's bringing up a good point, kind of opening up the valve, if you will, to go in this direction. So she says there's an adapted As a Woman Thinketh as well. So I've noticed something very interesting I've done over, I think probably 250, no, it's more than that now, maybe 300 hours of live streams between Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. And you can find most of them online. Leela, namaste, good to have you on. So that's a lot of content that I've been honored to share with people from around the world, and hundreds of thousands of views on the different videos that we've done. And most of them are about energy healing, meditation, and practical spirituality. And I do my best to stay away from divisive topics, such as specifically religion, specifically politics, because interestingly enough, about 2 years ago, when I was doing a lot of streams, I was doing streams every single day, promoting the work that I do, promoting the healings that we do to help people evolve and move their lives forward. Salvador, Atma Namaste. Dawn, Atma Namaste. I was really excited, but something happened. Something shifted within me, right? You ever talk about a certain topic over and over and over and over again, and you as the speaker start to get a little bit bored with your own topic, even though the topic is very new to a lot of the people who are watching it, or they're not as familiar with that topic. But I, as the speaker, was getting a little bit bored with my topic, and I was like, how can I spice this up a little bit? Rebecca, Atma Namaste, long time, girl. Good to have you on. So, what happened? I ended up going down that black or white, red or blue, I was taking sides. And in the taking sides, you're going to have contrast. And in the contrast, you're going to have conflict. So I thought, well, let's see where this goes. And it got a lot of engagement. Now, why do you think it got a lot of engagement? What is it stimulating within the listeners? What is it stimulating within the viewers? Shannon, Atma Namaste. Good to have you on. It's stimulating their solar plexus chakra. It's stimulating their emotions, right? I was bored, and boredom is a lack of emotional agitation. So guess what? I'm bored, so I'm going to stimulate my own solar plexus, which is therefore going to stimulate the solar plexus of my viewers and listeners and watchers and subscribers and followers, right? And so when I went to one of the annual Arahatic Yoga retreats in California, I met up with one of the pranic healing masters who I've been trained under for, at this point, about 14 years. And he intermittently watches my live streams, and he watches them to see how I'm progressing as a teacher, to see what it is that I'm teaching about, how well that I'm doing, kind of monitoring me to keeping me on track. And he recommended that I stay away from the divisive tactic. And I said, but with respect, of course, I said, but people want to be engaged, people want to be entertained, people want to be part of the process. And then want to be part of the discussion. And it's like, if it's boring, if it's plain vanilla, no one's going to stay engaged. And he says, well, the Holy Masters have been teaching this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Are they bored with the topic? And I had that little realization, that little light bulb go off in my head. And I thought to myself, it's a good point. So it's not about being emotionally stimulated or creating emotional division between with the topics that we're talking about, but it's having a very strong understanding and depth of understanding and breadth of understanding of the topic at hand. For instance, talking about a virtue like loving kindness and non-injury, or talking about the energy body, or talking about the incarnated soul and the higher soul, or talking about the basic chakra, which deals with more prosperity, abundance, and success, right? So in that moment, I realized that I was being led by my emotions versus being directed by my higher mental faculties. And that's kind of the meat of today's topic that I want to share with you guys, that I want to have you think about and meditate on. And Marisha, Atmanamaste, is that where you're getting your information from, whether you're getting it on the news, TV, newspapers, magazines, books, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're getting the information from, is that information designed to stimulate your emotional body and to lead you and to guide you in maybe not the best ways for your benefit? Or is it activating and stimulating your mental body, your rational mind, your logical mind, leading you to a better path? Because how many of us have noticed that when we make a highly emotionalized decision, that it tends to blow up and backfire in our faces later on in the day, the week, the month, the year, what have you, right? But how often when we sit down and we make the best logical, rational decision that we can, it tends to work out in our favor. And it tends to have really good upside and very minimal downside. And that is kind of our society these days. Because I notice when I go on YouTube, because most of all the information I get and interactions I have are on YouTube, not with my channel, which you can find my channel, it's Christian R. Long on YouTube. It's not my channel, but it's other content creators on YouTube. And I realize, hey, Michelle, Namaste. I realize I'm attracted to things that stimulate my emotional body. And then I ask myself the question, with this information that I've received that's stimulating my emotional body, what is the course of action that I'm going to take? Or am I simply getting my emotional body stimulated just like I'm eating a piece of candy to get that quick sugar rush? And that's what it is on an emotional level. It's that quick sugar rush. That's why we go to theme parks and ride the roller coasters. That's why we go to scary movies. That's why we self-sabotage our finances and our relationships, because our emotional body is looking to be stimulated, and then it gets its satisfaction by being stimulated, and then we go about life. But in that moment of stimulation, it can actually really hurt our progress. So Ellie says, the topic is very interesting, but I am in a crowded place and hard to hear. We'll stream it later when I get home, when it's quiet. Perfect. Which leads into a beautiful thing as well. So we have Emily throwing in a part of today's topic. We have Ellie throwing in a part of today's topic. Is that how does one go from an emotional perspective on life, reacting to everything in life, and go to a higher mental faculty where we're rational, where we're clear thinking? Now you might be saying, well, wait a minute, are you saying emotions are bad? Are you saying that emotions are deceiving us from making the right decisions? Not necessarily. What allows us to make right decisions is clarity. And what gives us clarity is stillness. So what's stillness? Stillness starts with the physical body. So if any of you have been following any of Grandmaster Choa Kok Sui's meditations over the years, you'll notice towards the end of all of the meditations, there's a time for stillness, where there's no music, there's no vocals, there's nothing, right? In his recordings of the meditations. And he'll say, be still, be aware, and let go. So in the process of you stilling your physical body, because if you ever notice when people are meditating, they typically aren't moving their bodies, right? They usually have their eyes closed, they're sitting upright, and they're just being still. In that stillness of the physical body, what starts to happen? your emotions start becoming activated. You start feeling things in your body. You know, you could be feeling sadness, you could be feeling happiness, you could be feeling joy, you could be feeling depression, you could be feeling hope, you could be feeling despair. It could be all kinds of feelings that you're feeling, right? So as you're feeling these things, you simply be still and be aware of those feelings. And as you practice stillness and awareness of those feelings, what begins to happen? The emotions begin to calm down. The emotions begin to dissipate. Very powerful. Then what happens when your emotions are calm? Your mental body, your thoughts start to become stimulated. You start thinking of errands that you have to do, phone calls that you have to make, people you have to follow up with, places that you're going to want to visit for the holiday season, you know, putting on this event, that event, right? So the mental body starts becoming stimulated. Then what happens when you become still and be aware of your thoughts? They begin to calm down. You begin to have stillness and clarity of mind. And then guess what happens? The higher intuition becomes activated. The higher intuition becomes activated. So, if you haven't, not mastered, but if you haven't developed the ability to still your physical body, your emotions are always going to be kind of stimulated, which never allows your mind, your emotions to calm down and your mind to be stimulated, and allows your mind to calm down and then your higher intuition to be stimulated. That's why a lot of people lack clarity in their lives. That's why a lot of people don't know what their purpose is and where they're going and what they're trying to accomplish, because ultimately their emotions are always stimulated. And what is our society based on? Meg, namaste. What is our society based on? Constantly stimulating people's emotions, and typically in a negative way, through fear, through inadequacy, through sexual energies is another way of stimulating people emotionally. So if people are constantly stimulated emotionally, then they're emotionally fatigued, and then they can't stimulate their higher mental faculties to see things clearly. And this is a big reason as to why I've always loved pranic healing from day one, from the very first class that I took in March of 2004, is that there's a slide in all the classes in pranic healing that says, use intelligent evaluation, practice discernment, experiment, and make your own conclusion. Meaning, you're going to receive information in this class. You don't know if the information is accurate or not, but we encourage you to experiment with the information that we share with you, and then you can make your own conclusion, meaning you don't have to take everything hook, line, and sinker. You don't have to swallow it blindly, blind faith, and you don't have to just take it because we said so. We want you to experiment, but experimentation requires the mental body to be stimulated because you have to think through the problem. But if you're constantly emotionally stimulated with fear, anxiety, stress, it's easy to be controlled. It's easy to be manipulated. It's easy to be taken advantage of. So in pranic healing, we talk about the solar plexus chakra. Master Choa says it's the center of will of the masses. The will of the masses, meaning the majority of the world, not just the United States, but the majority of the world is controlled by their lower emotions. So if you want to stimulate somebody to do or to not do something, you manipulate them emotionally. But guess what? If that person has a degree of self-mastery over their emotions, and they're coming from their rational, logical mind, which is more so the Ajna chakra, the chakra of the intelligentsia, the higher will, abstract thinking, the person will look at a situation, and rather than reacting emotionally, they'll look at it clearly and they'll say, well, the best course of action for this is this, and this. They do it with no emotion. But how many of us can say we consistently and persistently do that each and every day of our lives in all of our decisions? Right? Not many. But if you're constantly stimulated emotionally, you're going to make decisions based on how you feel rather than on what is the right thing to do. So I'll give you a perfect example. Working out. exercising regularly, and proper nutrition. Would we all agree that those are the right things to do? Working out regularly and eating properly. Yes? How many of us do that consistently each and every day of our lives? Not very often. Why? Because we're basing our decisions on how we feel. I feel like going to the gym, so I'm going to go to the gym. I feel, I could kind of stay in today. I don't really need to go to the gym, right? So you're making your decisions based on what you feel rather than what is the right thing to do. So the Ajna chakra, this guy, this energy center, says going to the gym is the right thing to do. Ina, Atma Namaste, you European traveling couple. Have you guys been in Europe for 6 months now? I think it's been about 6 months, right? I love the pictures. But if you're functioning from here, you go, well, going to the gym is the right thing. Eating this versus eating that is the right thing to do. And I'm just going to do that. There's no emotionality to it. That person or persons cannot be manipulated, or it's much, much more difficult to be manipulated. So going back to the book, as a man thinketh. So Emily makes the point that there is an adaptation to that book, as a woman thinketh. I would be willing to say there's no need to have a female version of that book, because it's about thinking, it's about rationality, it's about logic, right? It's not about the genders, it's not about the sexes, because if you look at math, right, because we're operating from the higher mental faculty, the throat chakra and the Ajna chakra, if we're looking at it mathematically, well, 1 + 1 = 2. That 1 + 1 = 2 formula will impact and affect a woman just as much as it will a man, just as much as it will a young person, just as much as it will an old person, just as much as it will a straight, gay, heterosexual, bisexual, transgender person. It doesn't matter. But if we're constantly stimulating our emotional body, or having other people, the environment, stimulate our emotional body, then we are going to be led astray. Ruth, Atma Namaste. So, granted, and I also learned this from the same pranic healing master, Sankita, Atma Namaste, that there's a term, this just isn't pranic healing, this is a term within spirituality, is that wisdom is in the heart. Wisdom is in the heart, right? So if we are able to access the wisdom of the heart, that will supersede our rational, logical mind. But how many of us can say we are activating, we're coming from our heart center versus coming from our solar plexus? Because if we lack awareness, we think we're actually coming from our heart, but in fact we're coming from our solar plexus, our lower negative emotions. That's what I'm talking about. So how do we know if someone is coming from their solar plexus versus coming from their heart center? Very easy. You can see it in their body language and you can feel it. I tend to not listen to people when they're in a hyper emotional state. And I tend to realize that they're not thinking clearly when they're coming from a hyper-emotional state. Does that make sense? So if somebody is screaming, yelling, chanting at the top of their lungs, throwing things, swearing, right? They're coming from a lower negative emotional place, and I tend not to listen to those people. But if somebody can make their point clearly, calmly, most likely I will listen to that person because they're coming from a more rational perspective. Also, if somebody's coming from their heart space, you can feel that as well. Because when we communicate from our heart center, there's pink energy coating our words, and there's pink energy in our aura. And so when that pink energy transfers from us to the other person absorbs it. Right? The other person is conductive and receptive to that loving energy. It's transmutive as well. So if that person has anger and the person who's communicating with them is loving, that loving energy will soothe and heal and transmute that anger. Can you imagine screaming and yelling at Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama? right? It wouldn't make sense because their auras are so big and filled with so much love that their capacity to transmute and transform the hatred within each and every one of us is amazing, right? And I've had the opportunity and the blessings. I've had the opportunity and blessings to be with people who are like that. That I'm stressed out, I'm angry, frustrated, not thinking clearly because I'm hyper emotional, and then I spend a few minutes with them. Everything calms down. Everything becomes still. Going back to our original point, without stillness, without awareness, you can't have inner transformation, and you can't see things clearly, which is ultimately the point that I want to pass on to each and every one of you today, is be careful on being constantly stimulated emotionally. Constantly stimulated emotionally. That's how politics manipulates us. That's how the media manipulates us. That's how marketers manipulate us. That's how, in general, that's how the world manipulates us, is through our emotional body. So if you don't get a hold of your emotional body, you will be a prisoner to your feelings for your entire life. Remember, is working out the right thing to do? Yes. Is eating right? Is eating nutritious food the right thing to do? Yes. If you're not doing that consistently, that's an indicator that you're being led by your feelings, you're being led by your solar plexus chakra instead of being led by the ajna or the higher mental faculty. Paula says, yep, gratitude for some people like that. Also, another reason why I love pranic healing so much that I haven't seen in other energy healing schools is, how to say this? So I'm sure you've heard the term forgiveness, yes? I'm sure you've heard the term gratitude. Yes, Paul just wrote it right here. I'm sure you've heard the term appreciation. Yes? Right? I've been studying personal development for 20 years, and it's been my profession for 14 years. And all the catchphrases that I hear on Instagram, Facebook, mostly Instagram and Facebook, talking about gratitude and the importance of gratitude and the importance of forgiveness and the importance of compassion, right? You know what's missing that I've noticed over and over and over again? There's no mechanism and there's no methodology to practice it, right? So you know intuitively that gratitude is the right thing to integrate into your life. Intuitively, you know forgiveness is the right thing to integrate into your life. Intuitively, you know compassion is the right thing to integrate in your life. How do you do it? What is it? How do you do it? And how do you measure it as you practice it? Right? So that's what I've noticed pranic healing has always offered, and that's what the term we call practical spirituality is. How do you integrate these great concepts into our day-to-day lives? And that's why, like, when I heard forgiveness 20 years ago, it was very ethereal. It was a concept that I couldn't wrap my mind around. I didn't know what that meant. It's like, okay, you need to forgive those who have hurt you. All right, well, I forgive you. Now what? There was no systematic step-by-step process to forgive another human being. What was the purpose of forgiving anyways? So this goes back to understanding. So there's a form of yoga called Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, which means the yoga of understanding, which uses the higher chakras, not the lower chakras. So for instance, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, is more centered around the heart, right? So people who are very devotional, whatever religion or spiritual practice they have, they're very devotional. They see God as a personal one-on-one relationship or a relationship with the beloved, right? That's the heart chakra. That's bhakti yoga. People who are jnana yogis use the upper chakras to try to understand God on the mental plane. So what I like about pranic healing is we cover all the different forms of yoga to help somebody properly, rapidly, and safely evolve the little self, the incarnated soul, back to the big self, the higher soul. But you need a way of doing that, right? As one of the master pranic healers says, you don't become a saint by accident. There's a systematic, step-by-step process that we can duplicate to accelerate our own process of becoming saint-like or to become holy. And that's what I've noticed is missing. And I don't want to say it's intentional, but I've noticed that's what's missing in a lot of our posts on Instagram, on Facebook, different books, that there's no practice. It's more of an ethereal concept of compassion, forgiveness, love. A friend of mine the other day, I was teasing her and I was asking her about love. I said, what is love? And she says, well, love is when you're, love is when you're loving towards another person. And I said, you can't use the word to define the word, right? She's like, well, what's love for you then? I said, love is to protect, to provide, and to preserve. That's what love is, to protect, to provide, and to preserve. And then that opens up, a whole other conversation. So the point I'm trying to make is you have to have a systematic way of stepping down these energies, these high concept energies of compassion, forgiveness, mercy, tenderness, joy, sweetness, all of these beautiful energies that you have to step them down and make them practical and integrated in your day-to-day life, because if not, what's the purpose of it? So I'm not a huge fan of, different posts on Instagram and Facebook talking about gratitude, because there's no practice connected to it. It's like, hey, be grateful. Well, what does that even mean? What is gratitude? What does it mean to be grateful? How do I show up in a grateful way each and every day of my life, or each and every moment of my life? Forgiveness. I'm still angry at my mom, and I said I forgave her, but why? Right? I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not going over anyone's head. I hope I'm not going too slow. But the takeaway for today's talk, Mark, Atma Namaste, the takeaway for today's talk is you have to practice stillness, you have to practice awareness in your life in order to see things clearly and to not be manipulated emotionally. Right? To not be manipulated emotionally. Jennifer, Atma Namaste. Good to have you on. It's been a while. Does that make sense? That's the takeaway from today's talk. By practicing stillness, physical stillness, emotional stillness, mental stillness, we're able to access our higher intuition, to have clarity, to have accurate perception and correct expression, and to know what to do in our lives. But if we're always being shook, if we're always being stimulated, if we're always being manipulated emotionally, we're not going to have that. That's why meditation is so extremely important. Again, you hear the term, everyone should meditate. Okay, well, what's the purpose of meditation? Which meditation should you use? Why should you use that meditation over the 400 other kinds of meditations, right? There's a meditation app called Headspace that has over 100 different meditations. Which one do you choose and why? This goes back to the importance of having a spiritual teacher who can guide you, direct you, and help stimulate your mental faculties versus stimulating your negative emotional faculty of being irritated and angry and right? So I hope that makes sense. If I can help you and guide you and assist you in the process of being cooler, calmer, and collected emotionally, and being more razor sharp in your focus, then let me know. Just go to christianrlong.com/services, schedule a distant healing session with me. Basically, a healing session is distant. It's online. We do 1 hour, 30 minutes of coaching to get clarity, understanding, remove blind spots, and then 30 minutes of healing connected to what we got clarity on. So for instance, let's say you get clarity that you have really severe anger issues and you had no idea, right? It's a blind spot. No idea that you had anger. Zero. And then all of a sudden, all this anger starts coming out and you're like, wow, had no idea I was so angry. Great. Now we know what to work on in the healing. So then the 30 minutes of the healing session, we work on anger. We remove anger, bitterness, resentment, fear, low self-image, things that are connected to anger. And then by the end of that session, you will be transformed. You will have greater inner peace, happiness, joy, forgiveness to yourself and others. That's the power of healing. And I recommend doing both. Yes, you can just do coaching. Yes, you can just do healing. But for the fastest results, coaching, healing, 1 hour session, bam. So again, go to christianrlong.com/services. I work with clients all over the world in all different time zones, as many of you already know. And that's it. So I want to thank you for sharing your time with me, sharing your energy with me, recognizing that in order to have a higher quality of life and to operate from a higher place, you want to have stillness, you want to have awareness, and you want to shift from being emotional about things and be more mental, logical, rational about things. And that way you can live a higher quality of life. And Paula says, bam! Paula, I thought you were going hiking. Didn't you say you were going hiking? Or something like that? I don't know. Hoosier or something? And that's it, guys. I love the opportunity to share these teachings of my teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui, with you. I'm still in the process of growing and evolving just like everyone else. I don't make, I was about to say I don't make mistakes. Weird. That's a weird Freudian slip. Meaning, namaste. I make mistakes just like everyone makes mistakes. And I'm still in the process of growing and evolving and becoming better. I've just done this practice longer than a lot of people. And I can probably share some insights and experiences that can help you move your life forward faster than if you were doing it by yourself. Y'all are with me. Sweet. So we're on the hike with Paula. I think Paula gets cell phone reception anywhere and everywhere she goes because she's like in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, hey, what's going on? Just thought I'd connect. And I'm like, sometimes in my own apartment complex, I can't even get reception, which is very strange. Very strange. Emily, I hope you got value out of today. I hope I clarified a little bit about where I was coming from with as a man thinketh, as a woman thinketh, their thoughts. It's a mathematical formula. It transcends gender. Because remember, the soul is sexless. That's a big one I want everyone to take away for today. That's another big one. I mean, we used to do live streams that were over an hour long. I've been cutting back and making the streams like 20, 25 minutes, but there's so much that I want to share with you guys that I used to go for an hour every single day for years. But we've kind of changed that format up a little bit. But keep in mind that the soul is sexless. The soul is sexless. The soul is sexless. So again, when people become over-identified with their sexuality, man, woman, transgender, heterosexual, bisexual, gay, lesbian, they're caught in the lower emotions because they believe that they are their sex. I am a man. Yeah, you're in a physical body that's a man or a woman or whatever, right? But if you live your entire life marching about that, preaching about that, chanting about that, writing books about that, you're caught on a very, very low level of consciousness and a low level of evolution. Because you as a soul, you're not the body. You're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, You're not the mind. The mind is just a subtle instrument of the soul. I am the soul, right? This is from Grandmaster Choa Kok Sui's The I Am the Soul affirmation. And as you identify with what you are, the soul, and you disidentify, disassociate from what you are not, you will become an extremely empowered individual who will not be manipulated, cajoled, tricked, misled, because you'll know who and what you are, the soul. So again, my little nugget or tidbit for you guys is when you see people becoming hyper emotional about something, that means they're not thinking clearly. It's impossible to think clearly when you are hyper emotional, positively or negatively, right? If you're laughing hysterically and you have tears rolling down your eyes and you're curled up in a ball and you just can't catch your breath, are you able to think clearly in that moment? Hey, Brian, namaste, right? Or what about if you're depressed, also curled up in a ball and crying, but you're depressed? In that moment, are you thinking clearly? No. When you're screaming and yelling at the top of your lungs and throwing dishes and pans, are you thinking clearly in that moment? No. Right? So you cannot be dominated by your lower emotions. Now, if you want to operate from the heart, that's a different story. Megan, namaste. If you want to operate from the crown, that's a different story. If you want to operate from the higher soul, that's a different story. But that takes practice. Years of practice. That takes training. It doesn't just happen. It's not happenstance like we talked about earlier. You don't become a saint by accident. So I have to watch that myself. I have to be vigilant with myself of, is the decision I'm making right now the right decision, or is the decision I'm making right now based on how I feel? And emotions are always fluctuating. That's the nature of the emotional body. It's designed to fluctuate. But if the physical body is still, the emotions are still, and the mind is still, the mind is like razor sharp. It cuts and penetrates deeply into a subject to extract the most accurate, highest level of truth possible. Think about this. Knowing what you know now, as a person who has lived more life and had more experiences, if you went back to your 10-year-old self, would you have made better choices, better decisions? Yes. Why can you do that? Why can you say that? Because you have a greater breadth of knowledge and experience and a greater depth of knowledge and experience, and allows you to see something. But if you can practice that in this moment of stilling yourself, you can penetrate into a subject deeply without having to suffer for years on the negative consequences of a poorly made decision. You can make the right decision in this moment if you penetrate the subject deeply. And that happens first by being still and being aware. Being still and being aware. I haven't seen Megan on the streams in a hot minute. She used to be on all the streams for like a year and a half, but the girl's been busy traveling around and all kinds of stuff. Good. So Emily asked the question, how are you defining right decision? I defined love earlier. Right decision. So right decision, God, that's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. So, if we're being led, we have, how to say this? We have our higher soul, which is the big boss, right, of our lives. The higher soul, the big boss. Then we have the incarnated soul, which is like the little boss. So the incarnated soul means our mental body, our emotional body, and our physical body, right? And the higher soul is the divine aspect of divine light, divine love, and divine power. So this is covered in great detail in one of Master Choa Kok Sui's books called Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul. And it's also a class. Isn't it an all-day class? trying to remember. I've taken the class several times, and is it 2 days or 1 day? I think it's 2 days. So in that class, you're taught what happens when you incarnate. So your higher soul, before you have a physical body, I'm going to kind of answer this in a detailed way. When you're about to incarnate, your higher soul, which is light, love, and power, which is energy, communicates with a great, great being. And you guys come together and you say, what lessons and experiences do you want to have in this incarnation? What lessons and experiences do you want to have in this incarnation, right? And so your higher soul says, well, I want to learn about forgiveness. I want to learn about compassion, and I want to learn about wisdom. For instance, those are the 3 qualities I want to have experiences and lessons on. Okay, great. So then that determines what time in history you're born, where in history you're born. Are you born in Africa? Are you born in the United States? Are you born in Asia? Are you born in Australia, right? Then what is the family dynamic you're born into? Are you born to a rich family, a poor family? Are you born do you have 5 brothers and sisters? Do you have just brothers, just sisters? Are you an only child? Are you an orphan? Are you adopted, right? All the dynamics are in place for you to learn those lessons. So you're saying, well, what's the right decision? The right decision is when that person is in alignment, when their incarnated soul is in alignment. Hey, Desiree, Atman Namaste. That rhymes. When your incarnated soul is in alignment with the higher soul, that's the right decision. That's why, in most cases, nobody can tell you what you're supposed to do, or nobody can give you the complete picture, because part of your work is to unravel the mystery of your own life, is to realize, wait a minute, this is my purpose. This is why I'm here. And Ashley, Atman Namaste. Alice, Atman Namaste. And here's an interesting thing. This is a big fat nugget. This is a big fat takeaway for everyone watching right now. When you are in alignment with your higher self, meaning making the right decisions, your suffering in life goes down. Your suffering in life goes down. Stan, Atman Namaste. The more out of alignment you are with your higher soul, with your purpose, with the right choice and right decision, the more suffering you will have. That's a huge takeaway. It took me many, many years to figure that out. Lots of suffering. That's how you know you're in alignment to making the right decision. But guess what? If you're always going out to get the right decision, books, seminars, workshops, tarot card readers, magic 8 balls, flipping the coin, right? If you're always going out to get the answer, it's going to be partially right, partially wrong. That's why we have to go within. That's why we have to go within. That's why we have to go within. All the great spiritual teachers throughout history always had time dedicated to going within. Right? So they would go into the inner world in their meditation. They would ask the question, Lord, what am I to do? Higher self, what am I to do? What's the right thing to do? And as they still themselves, they can hear the whisper of their higher soul guiding them to do the right thing. Even though externally it might not seem like the right thing, internally they know it's the right thing. For instance, how many of us have done something in our lives that as we are doing that very thing, there's something saying to us, don't do it. And we do it anyways, and it turns out to be a big mistake. That is an example of the higher soul is saying, hey, If you do this, it's going to get you away from me. If you don't do this, it'll bring you closer to me. Hello? Are you listening? And the reason we don't listen is because we haven't trained ourselves. The reason we don't listen is because of negative pride. The reason we don't listen is because of lack of purification. Does that make sense? So I hope that's a little clearer for you guys. And I just condensed, a big, very, 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 very big topic into, a couple minutes. But in essence, when you're in alignment with the higher soul, your higher soul, you're making the right decisions. When you're out of alignment with your higher soul, you're making the wrong decisions. It's very simple. Because being in alignment means we are walking the razor's edge. We are walking the Tao. We're walking the path of moderation and non-excessiveness, right? We're getting closer to become one with our higher self versus being out of alignment with that. So Megan says, you're right. It's been crazy busy. Finally trying to slow down a little. I miss getting on your streams. You're so adorable. Okay, so Emily gets it. Good. That was an excellent question, Emily. That requires thinking to ask that kind of question. And it's very interesting. We say in pranic healing from the masters that the type of question the student asks will determine if the person has been studying the books, has been doing their meditation practice, has been attending retreats. Because if you ask a question that is just off the cuff, that doesn't require any reflection, that doesn't require any depth, you can realize the student has a very surface level understanding. I remember for many, many, many years in pranic healing, I'd always be doing this in class, constantly raising my hand. But what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? Right? But my questions were very surface level. They didn't go to the core or a deeper depth. So the teachers and the masters knew that I wasn't sitting down and thinking through my question. I was more reacting of like, well, what about this? And what about that? What about this? Right? And then there came a point in my practice in pranic healing that I would raise my hand and the masters wouldn't call on me. And it made me furious. I'm like, I'm paying for this class. I've been doing this work for many, many years. This doesn't make any sense. Guess what? Reacting emotionally, not thinking clearly. And then it happened about 2 or 3 classes in a row. And then one of the masters brought me off to the side and he says, you know why I haven't been calling on you? I was like, so you did that on purpose? And he says, because I want you to think through your question. Because you're just asking a question to ask a question, right? That was a big, fat aha for me. Really, really transformed my life. And so I went from asking 30 or 40 questions over a weekend to maybe asking 3 or 4 questions over the weekend. And the questions I asked, when those questions were answered, it would deeply transform my life because I went deep with the question till I reached the point that I didn't have the answer anymore. And if I got that answer, it would transform my life. So, thank you guys for your time. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for sharing your energies with me today. Again, if you're in need of healing, go to christianarlong.com/services. Schedule a session with me. Schedule a time to talk with me. Ask questions. Go, hey, how does this whole pranic healing thing work? How does this whole coaching thing work? Is it for me? Is it right for me? Will it help me? How will it help me? And we can answer those questions and move your life forward. I've been doing this professionally for 14 years. A lot of experience doing it, but there's always more to learn, more to grow, and more to share with other people. So, love you guys very much. Have an amazing, phenomenal Sunday, an amazing week, and an amazing life. This is Christian Arlong, Life Enhancement Consultant. Atma. Namaste. Bye-bye.